All right, we are on chapter 17 now, page 112. I pile up wood and go on with winter. Now, I am almost to that snowstorm. That morning after, I had an awful thought about the wood. I got up early. I was glad to hear the nuthatches and chickadees. They gave me the feeling that I still had time to chop. They were bright, busy, and totally unworried about the storms. I shouldered my axe and went out. I had used most of the wood around the hemlock house, so I crossed to the top of the gorge. First, I took all the dry limbs off the trees, hauled them home. Then I chopped down the dead trees. With wood all around me, I got in my tree and put my arm out. I made an X in the needles. Where the X lay, I began stacking wood. I wanted to be able to reach the wood from the tree when the snow was deep. I piled a big stack at that point. I reached out on the other side of the door and made another X. I piled wood here. Then I stepped around my piles and had a fine idea. I decided that if I used one pile, I could tunnel through the snow to the next and the next. I made many wood piles leading out into the forest. I watched the sky as it was as blue as summer, but the ice was building up along the waterfall at the gorge. I knew winter was coming. Although each day the sun would rise in the bright sky and the days would follow cloudless, I piled more wood. This is when I realized that I was scared. I kept cutting the wood pile. I kept cutting wood and piling it like a nervous child biting his nails. It was almost with relief that I saw the storm arrive. Now I am back where I began. I won't tell it again. I shall go on with my relief and the fun of wonderfulness of living in the mountaintop in winter. The Baron Weasel loved the snow and was up and about in it every day before Frightful and I had our breakfast. Professor Bando's jam was my standby on these cold mornings. I would eat mounds of it on my hard acorn pancakes, which I improved by adding hickory nuts. With this as a bracer for the day, Frightful and I would stomp out into the snow and reel down the mountain. She would fly above my head, and I slid and plunged and rolled to the creek. The creek was frozen. I slid out onto it and would break a little hole in ice fish. The sun would glance off the white snow, the birds would fly through the trees, and I would come home with a fresh meal from the valley. I found that there were still plants under the snow. I would dig down and get teaberry leaves, wintergreen. I got this idea from the deer, who found a lot to eat under the snow. I tried some of the mosses that they liked, but decided moss was for deer. Around 4 o'clock, we would all wander home. The nuthatches, the chickadees, the cardinals, Fretful, and me. And now came the nicest part of the wonderful days. I would stop in the meadow and throw Fretful off my fist. She would wind into the sky and wait above me as I kicked the snow-bent grasses. A rabbit would pop up, or sometimes a pheasant. Out of the sky, from pinpoint on the thing, would dive my beautiful falcon. And oh, she was beautiful when she made a strike. All the power and beauty. On the ground, she would cover her quarry. Her first perfect feathers would stand up on her body, and her wings would arch over the food. She never touched it until I came to pick her up. I would go home, feed her, and then crawl into my tree room, light a little fire in my hearth, and Frightful and I would begin the winter evening. I had lots of time to cook and try mixing different plants with different meats to make things taste better. I must say, I originated some excellent meals. When dinner was done, the fire would blaze on. Frightful would sit on the foot post of the bed and preen and wipe her beak and shake. Just the fact that she was alive was a warming thing to know. I would look at her and wonder what made a bird, and a boy. The forest would become silent. I would know that the barn weasel was about, but I would not hear him. Then I would get a piece of birch bark and write, or I would make new things from the deer hide, like a hood for Fretful, and finally I would take off my suit and my moccasins and crawl into bed under the sweet smelling deerskin. The fire would burn itself out and I would sleep. Those were the nights of the very best sort. One night, I read some of the old notes about how to pile wood so that I would get to it under the snow. And I laughed until Frightful awoke. I hadn't made a single tunnel. I walked on the snow to get the wood, like the Baron Weasel went for food, or deer went for moss.